Sudanese Civil War, 1983 to 2005. Deaths, 2 million due to war, famine, and disease. Displaced, 80% of the population, or 4 million people, forced to leave their homes at least once. Many women and girls sexually assaulted, 11,000 abducted for slavery. Aftermath. Economic costs, 66% reduction in the nation's ability to invest in improvements and 8% reduction in national income from 1986 to 1990 alone. Conflict across all of Africa costs nations an average of 15% of their income per year. Mental health. Among Sudanese refugees, 32% suffered post-traumatic stress disorder, 20% suffered psychological disorders.
Sri Lankan Civil War, 1983 to 2009. Deaths, 20,000 to 100,000. Displaced, more than 400,000. Costs, over $200 billion.
Aftermath. Hundreds of thousands in refugee camps suffer from malnutrition and lack of water, medicine, and sanitation. The nation's tourism industry destroyed, as well as main infrastructure, with government revenues diverted from social projects. An estimated 1.5 million landmines and other explosives in the north continue to be a hindrance to the resettling of conflict-displaced citizens.
Second Congo War, 1988 to 2003, officially ongoing. Deaths, up to 5.4 million fatalities between 1998 and 2008, making it the deadliest conflict since World War II. Most deaths were from disease and famine, with almost half killed being children. Cost, $18 billion in lost income to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and it remains one of the world's 2 poorest countries. And counting. Aftermath, displaced. Fighting has continued for years after official end. Millions have been displaced. Victims of over 40,000 cases of systemic sexual violence continuing till today, with associated physical and psychological trauma, as well as the spread of HIV and other diseases.
All provinces remain affected by landmines and other explosives, preventing both resettling and reconstruction.
Iraq-Kuwait Gulf War, 1991. Deaths, up to 36,592 military, 4,664 civilians. Environment. Iraqi forces dumped 400 million gallons of oil into the Gulf and set fire to Kuwaiti oil wells, causing widespread environmental damage to the Persian Gulf and the desert. Costs, $6.1 billion for coalition nations, $1.5 billion extra for extinguishing oil fires. Aftermath. Health. 200,000 U.S. troops sickened by exposure to chemicals develop profound fatigue, gastrointestinal and respiratory disorders, joint and muscle pain, memory loss, depression, and dizziness. Economic costs. The UN ordered Iraq to pay $200 billion to victims, including individuals and companies, which was a factor in Iraq's subsequent slowed economic recovery.
Yugoslav Wars, 1991 to 1995. 1999 Kosovo crisis. Deaths, 127,000. Cost, $60 billion in damage for 1999 war alone. Aftermath. Water, air, and soil contamination. Release of cancer and other disease-causing chemicals.
Somalia Civil War, 1991 to present. Deaths, up to 1 million due to fighting, famine, and disease. Displaced, 1.4 million.
Not included are emotional, psychological, physical, and spiritual damage for people, children, and future generations.
Cambodian-Thai border dispute 2008 to present. Deaths 44 to 221. Displacement. Approximately 22,000 Thai citizens reportedly have had to abandon their homes.
Rwandan Civil War 1994. Deaths 500,000 to 1 million killed in 100 days, 7 to 13% of population. 250,000 to 500,000 women sexually assaulted. Aftermath. Displaced. 2 million became refugees, thousands of whom died of diseases in refugee camps. Widespread sexually transmitted diseases and thousands of pregnancies from sexual assault. Economic costs. National income, as of 2005, remains up to 25% lower than if the war had not occurred. Mental health. 25% of population known to have suffered post-traumatic stress disorder.
Afghanistan War, 2001 to present. Deaths, 54,000 to 74,000 military, Taliban members, and civilians killed. Injured, 59,500. Aftermath. Mental health. 60% of Afghans suffer from mental health disorders, while 20% of U.S. Afghan veterans suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder or mental issues. Economic costs. U.S. costs of both Afghan and Iraq wars over $5 trillion, including medical expenses for injured veterans, costs to U.S. families of deceased soldiers, debt interest and harms to U.S. economy. And counting.
Unexploded munitions. Some 2,000 people are killed or maimed annually, while economic development is hindered because farmland is unusable.
Darfur conflict, Sudan, 2003 to 2009-2010. Deaths, 150 military, 300,000 civilians. Displaced, 2.7 million. Costs. UN and African Union troops sent to Darfur in 2007 cost an estimated $2 billion in the first year. And counting. Aftermath. Women in refugee camps continue to be at risk of sexual assault. Mental health. Among those displaced within Sudan, 54% experienced post-traumatic stress disorder and 70% experienced general distress.
Iraq War 2003 to present. Deaths up to 750,000. Injured 72,539. Costs $704 billion in direct costs to U.S. and counting. Aftermath. Mental. 60 to 70% of Iraqi children suffer psychological problems, while 20% of U.S. veterans suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder or mental issues, costing $6.2 billion in the 2 years after returning from deployment.
Unexploded munitions. In the village of Said Jabbar alone, 16% of the population has been killed or injured by landmines and other explosives.
Economic costs. A Nobel Prize-winning economist estimates the total costs, including health care for disabled veterans, interest on debt and others, be in excess of $5 trillion and counting. The price of oil has also quadrupled since 2002.
Soldiers returning from both Afghanistan and Iraq have a 7 times higher risk of respiratory disease, in addition to a newly diagnosed lung affliction arising from a combination of environmental conditions and weaponry effects.
War on protesters 2010 to present.
Note, the figures that follow are confirmed totals only. The actual numbers may be much higher and counting.